Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live monthly Q&A on navigating parenting. We will be here the first of the month, the first Monday of every month. And you are welcome to submit any questions that you have about parenting through on Instagram. There will be a monthly post where you can also submit questions that you can send them to me in whichever way you know how to get in touch with me. We got some questions for this month, which I'm really excited about. They're really, really great questions that I think all of us can benefit from. So let's get started. So the first question that we got was from a mom who was asking, with work and all the things that she has to do around the house, how do you make sure that your children feel seen and important in your life? And this is such a good question because we are all so busy as parents, and split in so many different directions, especially right now. It's a really challenging time, and we have so many things going on and a lot less time to ourselves as parents, I think, to get them done, because our kids are home a lot more or home all the time. So this is such a great question. And my follow-up question would be, right? And I think there's two parts of this question. The first part is, are your kids saying something to you? Like, are they expressing the fact that they feel like they aren't heard and they're not seen and they're not getting enough attention and they're not important enough? Or is it just an internal feeling that you have as a parent? So I'll address both sides of this question, because maybe kind of both are applicable, maybe just one side of them. So the first side of that question is, let's say your kids do, they have said something, right? And they're telling you, like, you're always busy with work, you're always busy with doing something else, and you're not here enough with me. Now, there are two parts when we answer any question, when we're going into conscious parenting. The first side is the emotional, and then there's the practical. Because whenever we feel anything as parents, right? Your child is telling you you care more about work and taking care of the home than you do about me. Right away, we're going to feel triggered. There's going to be an emotional response because we're human beings and we have lots of feelings, and those feelings are usually then what cause us to feel bad about ourselves as parents or react in a certain way to our children. So the first side is, as a parent, the first question is to ask yourself, what are the feelings and thoughts that arise in me when I hear my child say that to me, right? And also notice, what judgments do you then have about yourself? Where are those coming from? Does it make you feel guilt, like you're not, or shame, like you're not doing enough or you are not enough? Or, does it make you feel like you're a bad mom, that you should be doing more? Right. So the first thing is to really, when with this question, right, how do you make sure your children feel seen and important in your life? The first thing is to recognize, what is my internal emotional reaction? And this is really important, because if we get really triggered, then we oftentimes it snowballs, and we're not able to really reel ourselves back in and give ourselves and then our children our all. So that's the first thing to notice, is, what is it bringing up in you? And then really practically, and if your kids have said something also, where is it coming from within them? Are they a child that really needs a lot of attention, right? Maybe, where's the feeling coming from? So there are a lot of ways that we can make sure our children feel seen and heard, despite everything that we have going on. A lot of times we mix up quantity and quality of time with our children. So, when we're with our children, are we really with them? And I know that this is probably a concept that we've heard before, when we're with our children, are we really with them? But what does it look like to really be with your children when you're with them? Sure, we all have the distraction of electronics, right? So, do we have our phone with us? And even if we're not constantly on our phone when we're playing with kids, do we tell them, wait a minute, I have to answer this one message. Wait a minute, I have to respond to this. It's really important. It's for work. It's really important. It's your father, whatever, right? But the truth is that every little interruption feels like a really big interruption for kids. And I know this for myself with my own interactions with my children. If I am saying, okay, I'm putting aside an hour of time to play with them, or even if it's 20 minutes of time to play with them, and I allow myself to get interrupted at all, even to go to the bathroom, they take it as this huge interruption. And it's like, it disturbs the quality of time that we're spending with each other. So while we have all of these things to do around the home or for work, this is part of life. These are things that our children will, I don't believe, is what's really affecting them. Like, I think ultimately they'll look back and remember, how much my mom cared about the house, how much she devoted to her work. I've never, you don't really hear about children whose parents, when they work a lot and the child knows that the parent isn't escaping from them, but working really to support the home, working really to contribute to the world. Oftentimes the child will look back and say, wow, my parent worked really hard for me, was really passionate about what they did. I got a great work ethic from them, right? But it's about when we're with our children, being fully present with them, right? So just not allowing yourself any interruption, even if it's 20 minutes, whatever chunk of time you're giving them, give it fully to them. And another important point that I just touched on, and I'm going to go back to, why aren't we spending more time with our kids? So again, right, if a parent has to be out of the house to work, to make money to put food on the table, we have to keep our home clean and taken care of, right? But why are we doing it? Are we doing it as an escape so we don't have to play with our kids? Are we doing it as an escape because this is like where I run away to when I'm feeling stressed out or challenged, right? I anxiously clean up the house, or it's easier for me to be at work or busy with talking to adults rather than my kids. Our children will sense that and feel that. So there's nothing wrong with taking care of the house. There's nothing wrong with working, of course. And those things can actually be huge life lessons for our children, but our children feel a lot. So when we're not with them, why aren't we with them? And it's an important, question to ask ourselves, because even if we do enjoy being with our kids, I'm sure there are times where we need an escape. We need to take a breath. It's about kind of being able to do that in a way that also teaches our children that we are human beings and adults who have needs and who, sometimes need to take some time. So it's asking ourselves, first of all, what is triggering us if our children are saying, you don't like to spend time with me? Asking ourselves honestly, are we giving our children uninterrupted time? I think uninterrupted time is so much more important than really, really long spans of time where we're not actually present and our kids don't really feel us there. Another way to make sure our children feel us there is to really, truly listen. How do we listen? It's a lot of body language, eye contact, just like fully being present with our children. And that also requires our mind, because so many times when we're with our kids, because we're kind of just playing, our mind drifts to all the other important things we have to do. And our children can sense that, because then we miss a word, or we ask them, sorry, what did you say? Or we're not fully present. And so quality over quantity when it comes to making sure that our children feel seen and important in our life. It's making sure that we really believe that they are, but especially in those moments when we're with them, when we're interacting with them, right? And now let's say our children haven't said anything. It's just this internal pressure that we have within ourselves, right? It's possible that it's actually not bothering them as much as we think it is, right? Maybe we're kind of like creating this scenario or situation for ourselves where we think like we're spending all this time away from our kids, but they're actually okay. And it's good for children, by the way, to have independent play. We don't need to play with them all the time, be entertaining them all the time. I have one video I recorded a while ago on social media where I said, let's let our kids get bored. I mean, I got bored as a kid. Today, we don't really give our children a real chance to get bored. Maybe that's a little bit different in COVID, but they have so many stimulation that when they don't get bored, then they don't know what to do with themselves, and they'll constantly be grasping and looking for something outside of themselves to bring themselves that inner fulfillment. And so I think that it's really so if your children have never actually said anything about this, but it's like an internal guilt or pressure, I think it's important to ask yourself why. Why does it bother you? And maybe it's your body's way of telling you that you're not actually giving them the quality of time that you could be when you're with them and when you are actually present. So I hope that that helps. If it doesn't, then send me another question, a follow-up question, and let me know how else I can help you with this question. Okay, second question that we got for this month. How can I be a good parent when I myself have a lifetime of unresolved issues or triggers? This is a great question because we are all human beings. And as long as we're here on this planet, breathing and functioning, we will have triggers. As much as we work on resolving our issues, and we will, and we can resolve many of them, there will always be something else to overcome. And there will always be another level of growth that we will uncover. And it's such a great question because it's exactly the process of a conscious parent. Navigating parenting isn't about being a perfect person who doesn't have any triggers. It's really about giving ourselves the space and acceptance to notice those triggers, to take the time to understand where they're coming from, to dig into ourselves. If we couldn't be a parent until we resolved all of our triggers and our issues, none of us would ever become parents. The strength of your parenting is equal to how much do you feel that you're giving to it. There isn't like, I have to clean up all of these challenges that I have before I can become a parent, or to be a good parent. A good parent, I mean, what is good and bad, really, right? A conscious parent, a parent who is intentionally navigating parenthood and parenting, is just constantly looking inside and noticing those triggers and figuring out where they're coming from. They're not coming from our children. Our children are not triggering us. It's something that they're doing that's triggering us, right? It's something that they're doing, meaning they're doing something and it's activating something within us, but it's not about them. It's always about us. And so as conscious parents navigating parenthood, it's understanding where those triggers are coming from and then doing the work around them, which is something beautiful that we do in coaching sessions, is really noticing what the triggers are, understanding where they're coming from, and then changing our belief around those triggers, changing the way our body physically and emotionally reacts and handles the triggers that exist. Because those triggers are really, they're rooted deeply for many of us. They're rooted deeply in childhood or in any, extreme situation or challenge that has happened between when we were born, basically, and until now. So how to be a good parent when we have a lifetime of unresolved triggers is just noticing those challenges when they come up and approaching the challenge in a different way. Learning to be conscious about the way that we approach those challenges, which is not putting it on our kids, but taking responsibility for it and, committing to doing the work of understanding where it's coming from so that we can uproot what we call this limiting belief, the story that we're telling ourselves in our head about who we are or who our children are. And it's really just, most importantly, just not about blaming our children, right? Or any person who comes into our lives and triggers us, but instead use that as an opportunity to work through them. When we're triggered, a lot of times we think of it like it's a bad thing. I got triggered, I got angry, I feel sad, I feel anxious, or our child is triggered. There's something wrong with them, something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us when we're triggered. It's part of being a human. Unresolved issues or the triggers are, and the emotions that follow them are our body's way of telling us, hey, there's something to work on here. There's a level of growth that you can explore, a way that you can become, get closer to the best version of yourself. And that is how we can parent consciously with a lifetime of unresolved issues and triggers. Just keep working on them. So another question I got, which is really, really great. What is the best way to handle a full-blown toddler meltdown when the whole body is on the floor and there's crying and kicking? Is it better to intervene with love while it's happening, or let my child express themselves fully and then comfort them? So this is a really great question because I think every single parent who has ever had a child has had some situation like this. Some toddlers throw themselves on the floor, some don't, but there's crying, kicking, or, isolating themselves. There's all different ways that children have tantrums. I'd like to expand this question into applying it not just to a toddler, but to a school age child, to a teenager. Okay. Because I think that when a teenager rebels, it's a tantrum. We have tantrums as adults too. We have meltdowns. So this question was specifically about a toddler, and I'm going to address it in general, because really we can understand that any huge burst of emotion that seems irrational, and that feels like we, as a parent, like we want to try to control it, to stop it, to figure it out. It's not just toddlers. It's for any age group, any age, even for us as adults. So the first thing is that when a person, okay, a toddler, a child, a teenager, an adult, is having a meltdown, that means that they're really triggered. And what does that mean when we're really triggered? Brain science tells us, okay, that children aren't able to self-regulate so easily. Eventually our brains do develop, and I won't get into too much brain science here, but eventually our brains do develop in a way that we're able to self-regulate. But if as children, think of your brain as our brains have neural pathways. Think of them as like when you go in the snow on skis, okay, like pathways. And when we don't learn how to self-regulate as toddlers, then as children and then as adults, we also won't know how to self-regulate, because our brain is programmed in a way that something is upsetting me, I'm going to scream. I don't know what else to do. I've seen an adult in my life maybe scream when they get triggered, or I've seen an adult shut down completely, run away escape from the house, whatever it might, whatever the reaction might be. This is the behavior I learned, and this is how my brain is now routed. When our child is in a tantrum or rebellion or upset, whatever it might be, when we are, there is no one to talk to, because the brain just shuts off. It's not able to hear anything that's going to be said. It's not going to register anything. So it's not just that there's no point in saying anything in the middle of a meltdown. It's also sending the signal. If our child's really upset or crying, it's telling them it's not okay to be upset. What happens when a child believes that it's not okay to be upset? I can't cry, right? I can't express my emotions. Yes, we do want to model and teach our children how to express emotions in a different way than kicking and screaming and throwing themselves on the floor. But at that age, as a toddler, they don't know how, they can't scientifically, their brain can't do it yet. So if they're not in the space of being able to hear us, what is the point of saying anything to them? It takes our energy. It makes us feel like we're talking to a wall. They're not hearing us. And whatever they're hearing is just adding fuel to the fire, because in this moment, they feel misunderstood. They don't feel understood. They don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. They're upset. They're in pain in some way. So when they're in a full-blown meltdown, we want to just allow them to meltdown. This is the way they're expressing themselves right now. This is what they know. This is how they know how to handle, I'm triggered in some way. So intervening in the moment is not the best course of action. The best course of action is to allow them. Now, of course, if they're in a situation where they are in danger physically, or they're putting someone else in physical danger, we do need to remove them from that space, okay? Of course, make sure that they're safe. But if they're in a safe space, just allow them to express, allow them to tantrum, okay? Once they've completely expressed themselves and they're done with this tantrum, and that might not happen right away. That could happen. We could be at the park and my child throws himself down. He might not be ready to talk until later on when we get home. He might not be ready to talk until the next day. The point is to find a moment. And this goes for our teenagers too, right? Our teenagers did something rebellious they weren't supposed to do. They took the car out, or they, when they weren't supposed to, or they spoke really disrespectfully, got really upset, ran into the rooms and slammed the door. If you go follow them through that door, the conversation will not turn out well, because they are not in a place to speak. The beauty is, though, that when a person is regulated, and what do I say when I say regulated? When they're in a place of being able to access like the full capacity of their emotions, right? They're able to be accessing like be acting from their strongest, best place, then there is so much that we can talk to our children about. There's so much that we can do to repair and to and to teach them how to express themselves in a different way than looks like rebelling and tantruming. When they're tantruming or rebelling, they're trying to tell us something. They just don't know another way to do it. So definitely the best thing is to allow them to express, especially because chances are also as parents, when they're triggered, we're going to be triggered. If we're at the park and our child is screaming, probably, I mean, we may feel embarrassed. We may feel helpless. We may feel like we just want to regain control, et cetera, et cetera. As a parent of a teenager, same thing. We might feel, really worried about our child. I can't believe they're speaking like this. They're older. They should know better. So we don't want to have that conversation with our children when we're speaking from a triggered place either, because we won't be able to express from our highest place, from our highest self. So the moment is never the best time. Afterwards, it is important to go speak with our children, to address what happened, to share. And that's a whole nother conversation in class, but I'll just briefly get into it because we are on the topic, right? To go in and not saying, like, we want to understand our children. Basically, we want to make every effort to sit there and have empathy for them, to really feel what it is that they're going through, to really genuinely get curious. I saw that you got really upset. I saw that you threw yourself down at the park. You put your whole body on the floor. You must have been feeling a lot of things when you did that. Were you feeling frustrated? Were you angry? Were you upset? There's always a reason why our child is doing it. It could be something that we did that we didn't even realize. It could be because, somebody walked by them the wrong way. But whatever it is, for them, it's a real reason, and it was a real trigger. And so we want to approach our children with a lot of empathy and understanding and compassion for whatever it is that they went through that brought them to the space where they felt that they needed to tantrum, where they needed to rebel, when they needed to speak disrespectfully, have a meltdown of some sort, and make sure that they feel heard and understood. It's much less about figuring out how to handle it and offering the advice than listening to them, listening to what it is that they're telling us, listening to what it is that they have to say, trying to find and really figure out why they're, behaving in the way that they are, and then, help them understand what brought them to that place. It's really important for us to understand, and then just understand it, right? We don't have to fix it in the moment. We don't have to come up with solutions. The most important thing is to just, oh, I understand. I hear you. I hear that you were feeling frustrated. I hear that you were feeling anxious. I hear that you were feeling angry. Just understand it. And then you can talk about self-regulation, right? I wonder what we could do the next time you're feeling like that could help you, so that you don't have to have this big explosion. It's okay to have explosions. There's nothing wrong with it. I would love to help you be able to figure out so you could, continue to have a great day at the park rather than, just have to go home afterwards and be upset. Again, it's okay that, the way that person walked by you really upset you and triggered you. So let's try to figure out a way that you could, notice it, feel how you're feeling, and then regulate yourself so you could continue to have a great day at the playground. I hope that helps. Please message me, follow up, any follow-up questions. Okay, and the last question that we have for today is another great one. Adult big emotions. What can I do for myself when I am exhausted and I want time for myself and haven't had it in a while? And when I do take a break, I feel guilty, miss my child, and so I shorten it to get back to her. And thus, I don't really fully enjoy the time that I have taken for myself. So this is a really great question, and it's definitely a good one to continue with from the last question too, because we're talking about big emotions, right? What can I do for myself when I'm exhausted and want time for myself and haven't had it in a while? So that's the first part of the question. And it's really important to understand that taking time for ourselves is really important. Here's why. I mean, we've all probably heard or read, that like, if our cup isn't full, then we have nothing to pour from. It's really true. Now, here's the thing. We feel we as parents sometimes feel shame, like there's something wrong with us that we need to take this time. And chances are that comes from the way adults approached self-care and taking time for themselves when we were children. A lot of us had parents that were, you know, that would tell us, I'm so devoted to you, or like parents that say, like, I just live for you, for my children, parents who maybe didn't take time for themselves. And so we have this like notion and concept in our mind that a devoted parent is a parent who's like just fully there for their child. We look at those women who are those moms or those fathers who are just all the time with their kids and like, oh my God, they're amazing. How do they do it? It's not natural for a person to make another person their whole life, because each one of us is a person with a soul, with needs, with their own purpose for being here. Our purpose isn't our children. And that can be really hard for a lot of parents because we get so wrapped up in our children and our children become our whole lives. And because they take so much time and energy that we aren't able to give to ourselves, and we want to give them the best. And so we put themselves first, which is natural and normal. And I'm not saying that it's bad. It is so important though to remember that you are your own person. You have your own purpose here in this world. You have your own mission. Part of it might be tied up with your kids, but for sure you have something to give that is yours, that belongs to you, specifically to you as a soul and a person. And so it's important for us to connect with that. And I think when we do connect with that, then we're able to have less shame around taking time for ourselves, because we understand that I'm important. I have to nurture, and understand that I'm important and nurture that purpose that I have, because period. There doesn't have to be, and yes, of course, then when we do, we have more to give to others, but it's not because we filled up our cup to give to others. It's because we got back in touch with who we are as a person and our purpose. And when we do, that connects us with life. That connects us really with our soul. So I hope that this Q&A was informative for you. It was really great for me, really such great questions. Please send me more for next month. I look forward to seeing you next, the first Monday of March. That will be our next live Q&A. And just as a reminder, we also have our weekly classes every Thursday morning, and the time is the same for all of it. It is 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.